The video call from Wesen shattered Louis Bryant's peaceful evening, her request to mate with him echoing in his ears. As a human male scientist on the joint human-Bajoran research outpost orbiting Bajor's moon, Louis had grown accustomed to unexpected situations. But this was beyond anything he'd imagined. Louis stared at the blank screen, his heart racing. Wesen, his Bajoran colleague and friend, had appeared distressed, her usual composure replaced by nervous energy. Her words replayed in his mind. "Louis, I need to see you. Now. In my quarters. It's urgent." The corridors of the station stretched before him as he made his way to Wesen's living area. The soft hum of machinery and distant chatter of night shift workers filled the air. Louis's footsteps echoed against the metal floors, each step bringing him closer to a conversation he never thought he'd have. Wesen's quarters were located in the Bajoran section of the station, a subtle reminder of the lingering separation between their species. As the door slid open, Louis found Wesen pacing, her hands clasped tightly. "Louis, thank you for coming," she said, her voice tinged with relief and anxiety. I have something important to tell you." She explained her predicament, the Bajoran time of joining, a mating cycle that demanded immediate action. Wesen had less than 48 hours to find a compatible partner or face severe health consequences. The gravity of her situation hung heavy in the air. "The Bajoran males on the station are either unavailable or incompatible," Wesen continued, her eyes meeting Louis's. I need your help, Louis. I'm asking you to mate with me." Louis felt as if the artificial gravity had suddenly failed. His mind reeled, trying to process the implications of Wesen's request. Interspecies mating was rare, and the political ramifications could be severe. Human-Bajoran relations were already strained following a recent territorial dispute. Any intimate contact between their species could spark a diplomatic incident. As Louis struggled to formulate a response, alarms blared throughout the station. Red warning lights bathed the room in an eerie glow. A computerized voice cut through the chaos. "Warning! Approaching asteroid field detected. All personnel report to emergency stations immediately." Louis and Wesen exchanged a look of shared concern. The potential damage to the outpost's vital systems took precedence over their personal dilemma. Without a word, they rushed from the room, the question of Wesen's request left hanging in the air. As they ran through the corridors, now filled with panicked staff members, Louis's mind raced. The conflict between his desire to help his friend and the potential consequences of his actions weighed heavily on him. The approaching asteroid field added another layer of urgency to an already complex situation. Louis reached his emergency station, his fingers flying over the control panel as he assessed the threat. Yet even as he worked to protect the station, Wesen's request lingered in the back of his mind. He knew that once this crisis was averted, he would have to face the most challenging decision of his life, one that could alter the course of human-Bajoran relations forever. The blaring alarms and flashing red lights drove Louis and Wesen into action. They sprinted through the corridors, dodging panicked crew members as they made their way to their respective emergency stations. Louis's mind raced, torn between the immediate threat and Wesen's earlier request. "We'll talk later," Wesen shouted as they parted ways, her voice barely audible over the chaos. Louis nodded, his attention shifting to the crisis at hand. He burst into the shield control room, his fingers flying over the control panel. The main view screen displayed the approaching asteroid field, a deadly swarm of rocks hurtling towards the station. "Shields at maximum," Louis called out to his team. "Divert all non-essential power to the defensive systems." The first impacts shook the station, rattling equipment and sending loose objects clattering to the floor. Louis gripped the edge of his console, his eyes fixed on the shield readouts. Despite their efforts, the numbers were dropping rapidly. "We're losing power in sectors 3 and 7, a technician reported, her voice strained. Louis's stomach dropped as he realized the shields weren't holding. "Reroute emergency power to those sectors," he ordered, knowing it was a temporary solution at best. Across the station, Wesen fought her own battle. In the research lab, she and her team scrambled to secure vital specimens and data. Her hands shook as she sealed containment units, her body racked with the physical symptoms of her mating cycle. She gritted her teeth, pushing through the discomfort to focus on the task at hand. A violent tremor rocked the lab, sending Wazen stumbling into a workstation. Alarms screeched as the computer announced, "Hull breach detected in Section 4 Emergency force fields activated." Wazen's heart raced. That was dangerously close to the shield control room, to Louis. She tapped her communicator. "Wazen to shield control. Status report." Louis's voice crackled through, tinged with urgency. "We're holding, but barely. The shield generator is malfunctioning. It needs manual recalibration from the outside." Wazen's breath caught in her throat. "From outside? But that's suicide in this asteroid field." There was a pause before Louis responded. "I'm going out there. It's our only chance." "Louis, no!" Wazen protested, but the communication had already cut off. Without hesitation, Wazen sprinted from the lab, her body protesting every step. She arrived at the airlock just as Louis was sealing his helmet. "I'm coming with you," she declared, reaching for a nearby spacesuit. Louis shook his head. "Wazen, you can't. Your condition is irrelevant right now," she interrupted, her eyes blazing with perseverance. "Two sets of hands are better than one. We don't have time to argue." Recognizing the truth in her words, Louis nodded. They quickly suited up and entered the airlock together. As the outer doors opened, the vastness of space greeted them, punctuated by the deadly ballet of asteroids whizzing past the station. They pushed off, their tethers connecting them as they navigated the treacherous environment. Louis led the way, his powerful strokes propelling them towards the external shield generator. Wazen followed, her Bajoran senses on high alert for incoming threats. "Louis, 3 o'clock!" Wazen shouted through the comm. Louis reacted instantly, pulling them both to the left as a chunk of rock screamed past, missing them by inches. They reached the shield generator, a massive cylindrical structure jutting out from the station's hull. Louis immediately set to work, his gloved hands deftly manipulating the controls. Wazen kept watch, her eyes darting from the readouts on her suit to the space around them. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness washed over Wazen. Her vision blurred, and she felt her grip on consciousness slipping. "Louis," she gasped, her voice weak. "I can't. Louis turned just in time to see Wazen's body go limp. In that moment, he made a critical decision. Reaching into his suit's medical kit, he extracted a stabilizing compound and, with practiced precision, injected it into Wazen's suit. The effect was almost immediate. Wazen's eyes fluttered open, her awareness returning. What did you do?" "Gave you a boost," Louis replied, his attention already back on the shield generator. "But it used up my emergency reserves. We need to finish this fast." With renewed focus, they worked together to complete the recalibration. As Louis made the final adjustments, the station's shields flared to life, a shimmering bubble expanding to repel the incoming asteroids. Their victory was short-lived. As they prepared to return to the airlock, a small piece of debris struck Louis's suit, tearing a hole in the fabric. The hiss of escaping oxygen filled their comms. "Louis!" Wazen cried out, her eyes wide with fear as she saw the damage. "It's fine," Louis grunted, but the strain in his voice betrayed the lie. "Let's move." They pushed off towards the airlock, but Louis's movements grew sluggish as his oxygen levels plummeted. Wazen, realizing the dire situation, made a split-second decision. She maneuvered closer to Louis, their bodies pressed together in the vastness of space. "What are you doing?" Louis asked, his breath coming in short gasps. "Saving your life," Wazen replied. She deftly connected their suit systems, sharing her oxygen supply with Louis. The intimacy of the act was not lost on either of them, their faces mere inches apart within their helmets. They reached the airlock with seconds to spare, tumbling inside as the doors sealed behind them. As the chamber pressurized, they removed their helmets, gulping in the recycled station air. Their eyes met, a new understanding passing between them. The adrenaline of their near-death experience, combined with Wazen's ongoing mating cycle, created an electric tension in the small space. "Louis," Wazen began, her voice husky, "you risked everything out there. For the station, for me." Louis swallowed hard, acutely aware of their proximity. "I couldn't let you die," he said softly. I couldn't let anyone die. The moment was interrupted by the hiss of the inner airlock doors opening. Medical staff rushed in, whisking them away to the infirmary. As they were separated for treatment, Louis and Wazin exchanged a final look, both knowing that their ordeal had irrevocably changed their relationship, and potentially the future of human-Bajoran relations. In the medical bay, as doctors tended to their injuries, news of their heroic actions spread throughout the station. Human and Bajoran crew members alike gathered outside, their previous divisions forgotten in the wake of this shared crisis. Louis lay on a biobed, his pupils dilating from the events of the past few hours. He had saved the station, nearly died in space, and now faced the most important decision of his life. Wazin's condition was stabilized for the moment, but her mating cycle was far from finished. As the medical staff bustled around him, Louis knew he had to make a choice, one that could alter the course of his life and potentially reshape the relationship between their species. The weight of the decision pressed down on him, even as his body cried out for rest. He turned his head, catching a glimpse of Wazin on a nearby bed. Their eyes met once again, and in that moment, Louis knew that whatever he decided, nothing would ever be the same. Louis's eyes locked with Wazin's, a silent understanding passing between them. Their shared ordeal had forged a connection deeper than either could have anticipated. However, their moment was cut short as Dr. Marcus Henderson approached Louis's biobed, his face etched with concern. "Louis, I need to speak with you privately," the doctor said, his voice low and urgent. With a reassuring nod to Wazin, Louis followed Dr. Henderson to a secluded corner of the medical bay. The doctor's demeanor shifted from professional to gravely serious as he began to explain the situation. "Louis, I'll be blunt. Wazin's condition is deteriorating rapidly," Dr. Henderson said, his eyes darting to the Bajoran woman across the room. "The mating cycle is causing her hormone levels to spike dangerously. If we don't act soon, we're looking at systemic organ failure within hours." Louis felt his stomach drop. "What are our options, doctor?" Dr. Henderson took a deep breath. "We have two choices, neither of them ideal. First, we can proceed with the interspecies mating as Wazin initially requested. It's the most straightforward solution. But the political ramifications... And the second option?" Louis pressed, his pupils dilating. "An experimental hormone therapy," the doctor replied. "It's untested on Bajorans, and the outcomes are uncertain. It could stabilize her condition, or it could make things worse." Louis ran a hand through his hair, the weight of the decision bearing down on him. I need time to think," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Henderson nodded sympathetically. "I understand, but time is a luxury we don't have. Every minute counts." Excusing himself, Louis retreated to his quarters, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. He paced the small room, trying to rationalize the situation, but his growing feelings for Wazin kept interfering with logical thought. The sudden chirp of his communication device startled him. "Commander Voss to Lieutenant Hark," came the crisp voice of the station's captain. "Hark here," Louis responded, trying to keep his voice steady. "Lieutenant, we have a situation," Captain Voss said, her tone grave. "Bajoran officials have caught wind of Ensign Wazin's condition. They're demanding immediate action to save their citizen." Louis felt his heart rate quicken. "What are our orders, Captain?" "For now, we're in a holding pattern," Voss replied. "But I need you to understand the gravity of this situation, Lieutenant. Your decision could have far-reaching consequences for human-Bajoran relations. A Bajoran medical ship is en route, but they won't arrive for another 72 hours. "Understood, Captain," Louis said, his mind racing with the implications. As he ended the call, the station's alarms blared to life once again. Louis's training kicked in, and he sprinted towards the command center, his personal dilemma temporarily pushed aside. He arrived to find Captain Voss barking orders, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. A sleek, unfamiliar vessel was rapidly approaching the station. "Report!" Louis called out as he took his station. "Unknown ship closing fast," the tactical officer responded. "They're hailing us." Captain Voss nodded. "On screen." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a being unlike any Louis had ever seen. Tall and ethereal, with skin that seemed to glow from within, the alien regarded them with eyes that sparkled like distant stars. "I am Zelnagaz of the Luminari," the being spoke, its voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "We require immediate access to your medical facilities. We have critically ill crew members in need of treatment." Captain Voss straightened, her voice firm but diplomatic. "I am Captain Ilara Voss. We're currently dealing with a medical crisis of our own. Perhaps we can assist each other?" Louis's mind raced, an idea forming. He approached the captain, speaking in a low voice. "Captain, their advanced technology might be the key to saving Wazen. We could offer them access to our facilities in exchange for their medical expertise." Voss considered for a moment, then nodded. "Make it happen, Lieutenant. Assemble a team and prepare to receive our guests." Louis quickly gathered Dr. Henderson and 2 security officers, briefing them as they made their way to the docking bay. As the airlock cycled open, Louis found himself face to face with Zelnaga and her team of Luminari. "Welcome aboard," Louis said, trying to mask his awe at their appearance. "I'm Lieutenant Louis Hark. We have a critically ill Bajoran crew member. In exchange for access to our facilities, we hope you might be able to assist us." Zelnaga tilted her head, considering. "We are unfamiliar with Bajoran physiology, but our biological knowledge is vast. Lead the way, Lieutenant Hark." As they entered the medical bay, Louis's eyes immediately found Wazen. Her skin had taken on a sickly pallor, and the monitors above her bed beeped ominously. Dr. Henderson and the Luminari medical team immediately set to work, their hands moving in a blur over various instruments and scanners. Louis moved to Wazen's bedside, taking her hand in his. Her eyes fluttered open, focusing on him with effort. "Louis," she whispered, her voice weak, "you came back." "Of course I did," he replied, squeezing her hand gently. "We're going to fix this, Wazen, I promise." As the medical teams worked feverishly around them, Louis found himself caught in a maelstrom of emotions. The fate of Wazen, the delicate balance of interspecies relations, and now the unexpected arrival of the Luminari, all hung in precarious balance. And at the center of it all stood Louis, keenly aware that his next decisions could alter the course of not just his life, but potentially the future of multiple species. The Luminari moved with fluid grace, their luminescent skin casting an ethereal glow over the medical equipment. Dr. Henderson worked alongside them, his expression a mix of concentration and wonder as he observed their advanced techniques. The air in the medical bay crackled with tension and the hum of advanced technology as everyone raced against time to save Wazen's life. The Luminaries' movements were a blur of efficiency, their hands dancing over Wazen's prone form with practiced precision. Louis watched, his heart pounding, as Dr. Henderson collaborated with the alien medical team, their combined efforts a symphony of advanced technology and medical expertise. Hours passed, each minute stretching into an eternity for Louis. He remained steadfast by Wazen's side, his hand gently clasping hers, offering what comfort he could through the simple gesture. The monitors beeped steadily, a constant reminder of the precarious balance between life and death. Finally, after what seemed like an age, Zelnaga approached Louis. Her luminescent skin cast a soft glow in the dimly lit medical bay, her star-like eyes holding a mix of hope and concern. "Lieutenant Hark," she began, her ethereal voice tinged with a note of gravity. "We have news regarding Ensign Wazen's condition." Louis straightened, his grip on Wazen's hand tightening involuntarily. "Go on," he urged, bracing himself for whatever was to come. Zelnaga's expression softened. "We have successfully developed a treatment that will stabilize her condition and prevent organ failure. However, I must emphasize that this solution is temporary. It will not fully perseverance the crisis brought on by her mating cycle." Relief washed over Louis, quickly followed by a surge of renewed concern. What does that mean for Wazen in the long term? The Luminary leader paused, her gaze shifting between Louis and the unconscious Bajoran. "Our analysis of Bajoran and human biology has revealed an unexpected compatibility. We propose a radical solution, one that could potentially satisfy Ensign Wazen's physiological needs without risking her health or causing diplomatic incidents." Louis leaned in, his curiosity piqued. What kind of solution? A modified version of the human mating process, Zelnaga explained, her voice low and measured. Enhanced by our biotechnology, it could provide the necessary stimulation without the risks associated with traditional Bajoran mating. Louis's eyes widened, his mind racing to process the implications. How would that work exactly? Dr. Henderson stepped forward, joining the conversation. The Luminari have developed a non-invasive neural interface, he explained, his tone a mix of excitement and professional detachment. It can stimulate specific areas of Wazen's brain, mimicking the effects of the Bajoran mating process. But for it to be effective, it needs to be paired with physical intimacy from a compatible partner. The doctor's eyes met Louis's, the unspoken implication hanging heavy in the air between them. You mean, me? Louis asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zelnaga nodded solemnly. Yes, Lieutenant, you are the most compatible candidate available. Louis ran a hand through his hair, his mind whirling with the weight of the decision before him. The ethical implications, the potential diplomatic fallout, the personal risk, all of it crashed over him in a dizzying wave. Before he could formulate a response, the medical bay doors hissed open. Captain Voss strode in, her face a mask of urgency. Lieutenant Hark, we have a situation, she announced, her voice tight with tension. Louis turned to face his commanding officer, noting the lines of stress etched across her features. What's happening, Captain? The Bajoran authorities have learned of the luminaries' involvement, Voss explained, her words clipped and precise. They've accelerated their medical ship's arrival. They'll be here within hours and are demanding that Ensign Wazen be transferred to their care immediately upon arrival. The news hit Louis like a physical blow. Time, already a precious commodity, had suddenly become even scarcer. He glanced back at Wazen's unconscious form, then to the expectant faces of Dr. Henderson, Zelnaga, and Captain Voss. In that moment, Louis made his decision. I'll do it, he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil roiling within him. I'll participate in the luminaries' treatment. Dr. Henderson nodded, immediately springing into action. We'll need to set up in a private medical suite. Zelnaga, if you and your team could assist. As the medical staff bustled around him, Louis felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to find Captain Voss, her expression a mix of concern and grudging approval. You understand the risks, Lieutenant, the personal and political implications. Louis nodded, his commitment strengthening. I do, Captain, but I can't stand by and do nothing when there's a chance to help Wazen and potentially make a scientific breakthrough. Voss squeezed his shoulder. Very well, I'll do my best to manage the diplomatic fallout. Good luck, Lieutenant. As Louis made his way to the private medical suite, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an ominous glow, and the overhead speakers crackled to life. Attention all personnel, came the urgent voice of the station's AI. Life support systems are experiencing critical fluctuations. This is not a drill. All non-essential personnel, please report to designated safe zones immediately. Louis froze, torn between his commitment to help Wazen and his duty to the station. Before he could decide, Dr. Henderson's voice came through his comm badge. Lieutenant, we need to proceed with the treatment now, the doctor urged. Wazen's condition is deteriorating rapidly. We may not get another chance. With a silent prayer to whatever forces might be listening, Louis pushed through the door of the medical suite. Inside, he found Dr. Henderson and two luminary medical technicians preparing the neural interface. As Louis approached the biobed where Wazen lay, he noticed a flicker of movement in his peripheral vision. Turning, he found himself face-to-face with Garen Kell, a Bajoran diplomat he recognized from earlier briefings. Lieutenant Hark, Garen said, his voice low and intense. I must warn you. Going through with this procedure could be seen as a violation of Bajoran cultural traditions. The consequences could be severe. Louis steeled himself, meeting the diplomat's gaze. With all due respect, Garen, Wazen's life is at stake. I'm willing to face the consequences if it means saving her. As Garen opened his mouth to argue further, another alarm blared. Dr. Henderson's voice cut through the chaos. Louis, we're out of time. Are you ready? Louis took a deep breath, glancing from Garen to Weisen and back to the waiting medical team. The fate of his friend, the delicate balance of interspecies relations, and the potential for groundbreaking medical advancements all hung on his next move. With alarms echoing through the station and the looming threat of both diplomatic crisis and system failure, Louis stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With a nod to Dr. Henderson, Louis took his position beside Weisen's biobed. As the medical team initiated the procedure, the station shuddered violently. Emergency klaxons blared, and red warning lights bathed the room in an eerie glow. Louis's comm badge crackled to life with an urgent message from engineering. "Lieutenant Hark, we need you in the main control room immediately. The station's life support systems are failing due to a suspected cyber attack." Louis's eyes darted between Weisen and the concerned faces of the medical team. He made a split-second decision. "Doctor, can you handle things here for now?" Dr. Henderson nodded grimly. "Go. We'll stabilize Weisen as best we can." With a final glance at Weisen's pale face, Louis sprinted from the medical bay. He raced through the corridors, dodging panicked crew members and floating debris as the artificial gravity fluctuated. Reaching the main control room, he found a scene of chaos. "Report!" Louis barked, striding to the central console. A human technician looked up, her face etched with worry. "The attack has compromised our primary computer core. We're losing control of critical systems across the station." Louis's mind raced. He turned to the luminary technicians who had followed him. "Can your biotech interface with our systems? We need to isolate the threat." Zelnaga stepped forward, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with energy. "We will attempt to create a quantum firewall. It may buy us time." As the combined human and luminary team worked feverishly to stabilize the station's systems, Louis's comm badge chirped again. Dr. Henderson's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Louis, we need you back here now. Weisen's condition is deteriorating rapidly. The luminary treatment is losing effectiveness. We have to proceed with the modified mating process immediately." Louis froze, torn between his duties. He glanced at the senior engineer beside him. "Can you handle things here?" The engineer nodded, her hands flying over the controls. "Go, we've got this." Louis raced back to the medical bay, his heart pounding. As he burst through the doors, he found himself face-to-face with Garen Kell, the Bajoran diplomat. Garen stood with arms outstretched, physically blocking access to Weisen's biobed. "This ends now, Lieutenant," Garen growled. "I cannot allow you to violate our cultural traditions any further." Louis stepped forward, his voice low and intense. "Garen, please. Weisen will die if we don't act now." The standoff stretched on, tension crackling in the air. Suddenly, Captain Voss strode into the room, her face a mask of dedication. "Gentlemen, we don't have time for this," she snapped. "Garen, I understand your concerns, but we're facing multiple crises here. We need a solution, fast." Louis's scientific mind whirred into action. "Garen, what if you observed the procedure? You could ensure we respect Bajoran customs as much as possible under these extreme circumstances." Garen's eyes narrowed, considering. After a long moment, he nodded reluctantly. "Very well, but I will be watching closely." As they moved to prepare for the procedure, a series of explosions rocked the station. Alarms screamed as emergency force fields snapped into place, containing multiple hull breaches. "The cyber attack has triggered a cascade failure in the power distribution system," Captain Voss reported, her voice grim. "We're losing structural integrity." Despite the chaos, Louis steeled himself, stepping up to Weisen's biobed. The luminary activated their neural interface, connecting Louis and Weisen. As the device engaged, Louis gasped, a strange sensation washing over him. Suddenly, he wasn't just Louis anymore. He could feel Weisen's consciousness, her memories and emotions flooding his mind. The physical and psychological strain of her mating cycle overwhelmed him, giving him a profound new understanding of Bajoran biology and culture. Through their shared awareness, Louis sensed Weisen's gratitude and trust. It strengthened his willpower to see this through, no matter the consequences. The medical bay lurched violently. The artificial gravity failed, sending equipment and personnel floating upward. Dr. Henderson cursed, struggling to maintain his position. "We can't interrupt the neural connection," he warned. "It could cause severe trauma to both of them." The luminari reacted instantly. Their skin glowed brighter, and a shimmering energy field enveloped Louis and Wesen, anchoring them in place. As the procedure continued, Louis became aware of a commotion beyond the medical bay. Through the neural link, he sensed Wesen's growing concern. Captain Voss's voice cut through the chaos. "Unknown vessel breaching our perimeter. All available personnel, prepare for potential intruders." Louis felt a surge of protective instinct, both his own and Wesen's. Through their shared consciousness, they formulated a plan. Using the luminari neural interface as a conduit, Louis reached out with his mind, connecting to the station's computer systems. With Wesen's intimate knowledge of Bajoran technology and his own expertise, they began to fight back against the cyber attack. Lines of code flowed through their shared consciousness, repairing damaged systems and strengthening the station's defenses. As the modified mating procedure neared its conclusion, Louis and Wesen's merged minds raced to save not just themselves, but the entire outpost. The fate of human-Bajoran luminary relations hung in the balance as they worked furiously, their combined intellects a formidable weapon against the unseen attackers. In that moment, suspended in zero gravity and linked by alien technology, Louis realized that this crisis had forged a connection deeper than he could have ever imagined. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew that he and Wesen would face them together, their bond transcending the boundaries of species and space itself. The surge of energy coursing through the neural interface caught Louis off guard. His mind, already intertwined with Wesen's, felt as if it were expanding beyond the confines of his skull. Colors swirled in his vision, and he sensed Wesen's presence more acutely than ever before. Dr. Henderson's voice cut through the haze. "Remarkable. The interface is stabilizing. Wesen's vitals are improving rapidly." Louis blinked, trying to focus on his surroundings. The luminary biotechnology pulsed with a soft, ethereal glow, casting dancing shadows across the medical bay. He felt Wesen's relief wash over him, her physical distress ebbing away like a receding tide. Suddenly, Captain Voss's urgent voice crackled over the comm system. "Security alert! Unknown vessel breaching outer airlock. All personnel, prepare for potential intruders." Louis struggled to process the information, his mind still half-linked with Wesen's. Through their shared consciousness, he sensed her growing concern, mirroring his own. Dr. Henderson and Zelnaga moved with practiced efficiency, working to safely disconnect Louis and Wesen from the neural interface. As they did so, Louis became aware of Garen Kell's presence. The Bajoran diplomat's expression had shifted from earlier hostility to one of cautious wonder. This is unprecedented," Garen murmured, his eyes fixed on the pulsating luminary technology. Before anyone could respond, the station shuddered violently. Alarms blared, their shrill cries piercing the air. Captain Voss's voice came through again, tight with tension. "Intruders identified as Purity Front extremists. They're heading for the medical bay, initiating station-wide lockdown." Louis's mind raced, the last vestiges of the neural link fading. He turned to Dr. Henderson. "We need to move Wesen, now." The doctor nodded, already prepping the unconscious Bajoran for transport. "There's a maintenance shaft behind that panel," he said, gesturing to the far wall. "It leads to a secure area on the lower deck." Louis turned to Garen, expecting resistance. To his surprise, the diplomat nodded grimly. "I'll help you defend them," Garen said, his earlier antagonism replaced by a steely persistence. "This treatment, it could benefit both our peoples. We can't let these extremists destroy it." As Dr. Henderson and Zelnaga carefully maneuvered Wesen into the maintenance shaft, Louis and Garen took up defensive positions near the medical bay entrance. The security team, a mix of humans and other species, readied their weapons. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the corridors, growing closer by the second. Louis accessed a nearby control panel, pulling up a schematic of the surrounding area. "We can use the station's systems against them," he said, fingers flying over the interface. "I can create choke points, slow them down." Garen watched, impressed despite himself. "Clever," he muttered. "But will it be enough?" Before Louis could respond, The medical bay doors shuddered under a heavy impact. The security team tensed, weapons trained on the entrance. With a screech of tearing metal, the doors burst open. Masked figures poured into the room, advanced weapons spitting energy bolts. Louis and the defenders returned fire, the air filling with the acrid smell of ozone and burned circuitry. Louis ducked behind an overturned medical console, his mind working furiously. He spotted a power conduit running along the ceiling and had an idea. "Cover me!" he shouted to Garen, who nodded and laid down a barrage of suppressing fire. Dodging energy bolts, Louis sprinted to a control panel on the far wall. His fingers danced over the interface, rerouting power from non-essential systems. The lights flickered, and for a heart-stopping moment, he thought he'd overloaded the grid. Then, with a satisfying crackle, a surge of energy coursed through the room. The intruders' weapons sputtered and died, their advanced technology temporarily disabled by the power fluctuation. "Now!" Louis yelled, and the defenders pressed their advantage. In the confusion, they managed to subdue several of the Purity Front members. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining extremists regrouped, their leader barking orders in a harsh, synthesized voice. They pressed forward, forcing Louis and Garen back towards the far end of the medical bay. Just as the situation seemed dire, Captain Voss's voice came over the comm system. "Security teams have secured the docking bay. Intruders' escape route is cut off. Hold your positions." The Purity Front leader, realizing their mission had failed, snarled an order. The extremists surged forward in a desperate, all-out assault. In the chaos that followed, Louis saw one of the intruders take aim at Garen. Without thinking, he shoved the Bajoran diplomat aside. The energy bolt meant for Garen struck a power junction behind them. The world seemed to slow. Louis saw the junction spark, felt the rumble of building pressure. He opened his mouth to shout a warning, but it was too late. The explosion ripped through the medical bay, the concussive force throwing Louis off his feet. He hit the ground hard, ears ringing. Through blurred vision, he saw emergency force fields shimmer into existence, containing the explosive decompression. But as the smoke cleared, Louis realized with growing horror that he was on the wrong side of the barrier. Trapped in a rapidly depressurizing section of the medical bay, he could see Garen and the security team on the other side, their shouts muted by the force field. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, sending loose equipment floating around him. Louis's chest tightened as he gasped for breath, the oxygen levels dropping precipitously. Through the haze of encroaching hypoxia, he forced himself to focus. The captured Purity Front members were still here with him, also struggling in the failing atmosphere. Louis knew he couldn't let them take advantage of the chaos. Despite his own perilous situation, he had to find a way to secure the prisoners, save himself, and prevent further damage to the station. As black spots danced at the edges of his vision, Louis reached for a nearby console, his movements slowed by the thinning air and fluctuating gravity. He had to find a way out, and fast. The fate of the station, the breakthrough treatment, and his own life hung in the balance. Time was running out, and Louis knew that his next actions would determine whether this crisis ended in triumph or tragedy. Tragedy. With a surge of adrenaline, Louis forced his sluggish limbs into action. His eyes darted around the depressurizing section, searching for anything that might save him from an agonizing death in the vacuum of space. There, nestled in an alcove near the far wall, he spotted salvation, an emergency spacesuit locker. Louis propelled himself towards it, fighting against the wildly fluctuating gravity. His fingers, already numb from the rapidly thinning air, fumbled with the latch. The locker swung open, revealing a pristine emergency suit. Louis grabbed it, his motions growing more frantic as black spots danced at the edges of his vision. He struggled into the suit, acutely aware of every precious second ticking away. Just as his consciousness began to fade, Louis sealed the helmet with a satisfying click. The suit's systems hummed to life, flooding his lungs with blessed oxygen. He gulped it down greedily, feeling strength return to his limbs. Through the helmet's faceplate, Louis saw Garen and the security team on the other side of the force field. Their mouths moved soundlessly, faces etched with concern. Louis gave them a weak thumbs up, then turned his attention to the captured Purity Front members. The extremists were in dire straits, their bodies floating limply in the near vacuum. Louis knew he had to act fast to save them, despite their earlier attempts on his life. He spotted a rack of emergency oxygen masks nearby and moved to retrieve them. As Louis worked to secure the prisoners and provide them with oxygen, his mind raced through potential escape scenarios. The force field cutting off this section of the medical bay remained stubbornly active, a shimmering barrier between safety and certain death. Louis activated the suit's comm system, hoping to reach Captain Voss or Dr. Henderson. Static filled his ears. The cyber attack had clearly damaged more than just the station's physical systems. He was on his own. Scanning the walls of the medical bay, Louis' gaze fell upon a maintenance hatch. His heart leapt. It could lead to the station's outer hull. It was a long shot, but it might be his only chance at survival. Louis made his way to the hatch, each movement deliberate in the unpredictable gravity. He hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the unconscious Purity Front members. Their oxygen masks would keep them alive for now, but without a rescue, they would eventually succumb to the hostile environment. With a silent promise to return for them if he could, Louis opened the hatch and pulled himself into the narrow maintenance shaft. Meanwhile, several decks below, Wezin's eyes fluttered open. She found herself in an unfamiliar room, the concerned faces of Dr. Henderson and Zelnaga hovering above her. As her senses sharpened, a flood of memories and sensations washed over her. The modified mating procedure, the neural link with Louis, it all came rushing back with startling clarity. But there was something else, something new. Wezin felt a strange connection to her surroundings, as if she could sense the emotions and presence of others throughout the station. Her eyes widened as she became aware of Louis' predicament. Despite the distance between them, she could feel his grit, his fear, and his desperate struggle for survival. "Louis," Wezin gasped, sitting up abruptly. "He's in danger. We have to help him." Dr. Henderson placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Wezin, you need to rest. The procedure—" "No," Wezin interrupted, her voice firm. "You don't understand. I can feel him. He's outside the station. We need to go now." The luminary present exchanged meaningful glances, their bioluminescent skin pulsing with interest. Zelnaga stepped forward, their multifaceted eyes fixed on Wezin. "This is an unexpected development," they said, their harmonious voice tinged with curiosity. "The neural link appears to have enhanced your empathic abilities beyond our predictions. We will escort you to the medical bay." Dr. Henderson opened his mouth to protest, but the determined look in Wezin's eyes stopped him. He nodded reluctantly, helping her to her feet. As they made their way through the chaotic corridors of the station, Wezin's newfound abilities proved invaluable. She sensed pockets of Purity Front intruders before they came into view, allowing the group to take alternate routes and avoid confrontation. In the command center, Captain Voss coordinated the station's recovery efforts with grim efficiency. Engineers worked feverishly to combat the cyber attack, while security teams swept the station for any remaining extremists. "Captain," a young ensign called out, his voice tight with concern. "We've lost contact with the medical bay. Reports indicate a hull breach and possible explosive decompression." Voss's fist tight. "What about Louis Chen? Any word on his status?" The ensign shook his head. "No updates, Captain. Last report had him trapped in the depressurized section." Voss closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself a brief instant of worry for her friend and colleague. Then, with practiced composure, she turned back to the task at hand. "Dispatch an engineering team to restore power to that section," she ordered, "and get me a direct line to Earth and Bajor. We need to inform them of the situation before rumors start flying." As the command center buzzed with activity, Louis inched his way along the station's outer hull. The vastness of space surrounded him, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. His spacesuit's oxygen levels ticked down steadily, a constant reminder of the precarious nature of his situation. Louis spotted an airlock in the distance, hope surging in his chest. But as he pushed off from the hull to propel himself toward it, a piece of debris from the earlier explosion struck his helmet. The impact sent him spinning, disorienting him and throwing him off course. Panic threatened to overwhelm Louis as he tumbled through space, the station receding from view. He forced himself to remain calm, using the suit's maneuvering thrusters to stabilize his position. As he reoriented himself, Lewis's heart sank. The airlock was now much further away, and his oxygen levels had dropped into the red. Just as despair began to set in, Louis felt a strange sensation, a presence in his mind, familiar and comforting. Somehow, impossibly, he sensed Wesen. Her perseverance and concern washed over him, giving him renewed strength. At that moment, a shimmering energy tether materialized before him, stretching from the airlock to his position in space. Louis didn't understand the technology behind it, but he recognized the glow of luminary bioengineering. With the last of his strength, Louis grasped the energy tether. It pulsed with warmth, guiding him back toward the station. As he neared the airlock, he saw figures waiting for him. Wesen, flanked by luminari, their skin glowing brightly as they maintained the tether. The airlock cycled open, and hands reached out to pull Louis to safety. As his helmet was removed, Louis gulped down the station's air, his lungs burning. Through blurred vision, he saw Wesen's face, etched with relief and something more, a connection that defied explanation. Dr. Henderson appeared at his side, medical tricorder whirring. "Multiple contusions, mild hypoxia," he muttered. "We need to get him to the medical bay immediately." As Louis was lifted onto a stretcher, his eyes locked with Wesen's. In that moment, despite the chaos around them and the uncertainties that lay ahead, a profound understanding passed between them. Their shared experience had forged a bond that transcended species, one that would shape not only their futures, but potentially the future of human-Bajoran relations. While Louis was rushed to treatment, Captain Voss stood in the command center, preparing to address representatives from all three species. The aftermath of the Purity Front attack and the unprecedented events that followed would have far-reaching consequences. As she gathered her thoughts, Voss knew that the coming hours would be crucial in determining the path forward for humans, Bajorans, and the luminary. As the dust settled from the Purity Front attack, the station gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. Captain Voss stood at the head of the conference room, her posture rigid as she faced the holographic projections of representatives from Earth, Bajor, and the luminary homeworld. The air crackled with tension and anticipation. "Thank you all for convening on such short notice," Voss began, her voice steady. "As you're aware, recent events have raised serious questions about the future of our cooperation. I believe we have an opportunity to address these concerns and chart a path forward." She gestured to Louis and Wesen, who sat side by side at the conference table. "We have with us two individuals who can provide unique insight into the situation. Dr. Louis Chen and Wesen, if you would please share your experiences." Louis stood, his legs still a bit shaky from his ordeal. He recounted the events leading up to the attack, the experimental procedure, and his harrowing journey through space. As he spoke, Wesen's presence in his mind provided a comforting anchor, helping him articulate the indescribable connection they now shared. When Wesen took over, her melodic voice filled the room. She described the unexpected enhancement of her empathic abilities and how it had allowed her to sense Louis's predicament. The assembled dignitaries listened with rapt attention, their expressions a mix of amazement and cautious optimism. The luminary representative, a being of swirling light and color, leaned forward. "This outcome exceeds our most optimistic projections. We propose a long-term scientific exchange program to further explore the potential of our biotechnology when combined with human and Bajoran physiology." As discussions progressed, a priority message flashed across Captain Voss's datapad. She cleared her throat, interrupting a debate about resource allocation. "I've just received word that the Purity Front's main base of operations has been located and neutralized by a joint human-Bajoran task force. The information provided by our captured intruders proved invaluable." A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. The Bajoran ambassador, his earring glinting in the light, nodded approvingly. "This is excellent news. Perhaps now we can focus on building bridges rather than defending against those who would tear them down." Inspired by the positive turn of events, Louis stood once more. "If I may, I have a proposal." All eyes turned to him as he continued. "The events of the past few days have shown us the incredible potential of combining our medical knowledge. I suggest we establish an interspecies medical research center here on the station dedicated to studying and developing new treatments that harness the strengths of human, Bajoran, and luminary expertise. The room buzzed with excitement. The Earth representative, a stern-faced woman with graying hair, leaned forward. Dr. Chen, can you elaborate on the potential benefits of such a center? Louis nodded, feeling Weizen's encouraging presence in his mind. Imagine treatments that combine the regenerative properties of Bajoran physiology with the adaptability of human immune systems, all enhanced by luminary bioengineering. We could cure diseases once thought incurable, extend lifespans, and improve quality of life across all our species. The proposal was met with enthusiasm from all parties. Within hours, plans were set in motion to make the Interspecies Medical Research Center a reality. In the weeks that followed, the station underwent extensive repairs and upgrades. Louis and Weizen found themselves spending more time together, both professionally and personally. They explored the limits of their newfound connection, discovering they could sense each other's emotions and physical states, even when separated by several decks. One evening, as they worked late in one of the newly renovated labs, Louis felt a wave of curiosity emanate from Weizen. He looked up from his microscope to find her studying him intently. "What is it?" he asked, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Weizen tilted her head, her spots shifting slightly as she considered her words. "I was just thinking about how far we've come. A few months ago, we were strangers from different worlds. Now," she trailed off, her hand unconsciously reaching for his. Louis took her hand, marveling at how natural it felt. "Now we're connected in a way no one else can understand. It's incredible, isn't it?" She nodded, her eyes shining. "It is, and yet there's still so much to learn about each other, about our cultures, our differences." "We have time," Louis assured her, feeling a surge of affection. "And we have this center to help us bridge those gaps, not just for us, but for everyone." 3 months after the Purity Front attack, the Interspecies Medical Research Center was officially inaugurated. The station's promenade was festooned with banners representing Earth, Bajor, and the luminary homeworld. Dignitaries from across the galaxy gathered to witness the historic event. Captain Voss stood at the podium, her uniform crisp and her expression solemn. "It is my great honor to declare the Interspecies Medical Research Center open, and it is with even greater pleasure that I announce its co-directors, Dr. Louis Chen and Weizen." Applause filled the air as Louis and Weizen stepped forward. As they shook hands with the assembled officials, both could sense the other's mix of pride, excitement, and nervousness. Their unique bond allowed them to present a united front, seamlessly finishing each other's sentences and addressing concerns before they were even voiced. As the ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Garen Kell, newly appointed as the Bajoran ambassador to the station, approached them. "Congratulations, both of you. I must admit, when I first suggested this treatment to Louis, I never imagined it would lead to all this." Louis chuckled, remembering the conversation that had set everything in motion. "Neither did I, Garen, but I'm grateful for it, and for your friendship." Weizen nodded in agreement. "As am I. Your trust in both of us has opened doors we never knew existed." As they chatted, Louis felt a familiar presence approach. He turned to see Zelnaga, the luminary scientist who had overseen the original procedure. Their bioluminescent skin pulsed with what Louis had come to recognize as excitement. "Your achievement here is most impressive," Zelnaga said, their harmonic voice resonating in the air. "We look forward to the advancements that will undoubtedly emerge from this collaboration." As the group continued to converse, discussing the future of the center and the potential breakthroughs on the horizon, Louis and Weizen exchanged a glance. In that moment, they both felt the weight of the responsibility they now carried, balanced by the excitement of the journey ahead. The station, once a place of tension and mistrust, had become a beacon of hope and unity for all species, and they were at the heart of it all.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.